What we're doing here today, what we should be doing, we should be somehow introducing Advantage.green, which is a sustainable platform for consumers and for businesses. This type of platform is being developed based on several years of hard work on indexes and sustainable goals, which are usually the one that are given, or the guidelines from the United Nations, and some of them from the European Community.
Sustainability has many dimensions. We have been exploring this dimension in different ways. One very important one has to do with how one measures the impact of production and distribution on the environment and on society. And over the years, international institutions, the European Union, have developed criteria to certify how this impact takes place and how this impact affects the water, the environment, the air, and our life. This certification can be obtained, these values can be obtained also by examining the different phases of production of companies and calculating their environmental footprint over the cycle of life of a product. Think of a bottle of olive oil. You start from when the seeds of the olive trees are planted, and you get to when products are distributed with trucks and come to your table.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I think we're going to zoom out from the previous presentation and kind of from the macro level to the macro level. So I'll try to walk you through the kind of work that we're doing at the World Bank to look at sustainability, focusing on environmental sustainability. So first describing the work that we're doing at the global level, then next the work that we're doing at the country level, and then tell a little bit the next steps, the next program that we are rolling out now. So just in terms of overall context, you might know that the World Bank has two main goals: ending extreme poverty. So basically bringing down to 3% by 2030 the share of population living in absolute poverty, and then boosting share prosperity, which means essentially supporting the incomes of the bottom 40% along the income distribution. But all of that is expected to be done in a sustainable manner, so something that lasts beyond just the attainment of the goal. So clearly the question becomes how do we actually monitor and measure this notion of sustainability? So we've been, the bank has been working for quite some time and part of the environment global practice on these issues. We, in particular, we have a program called WASE, which stands for Wealth, Accounting and Valuation of Ecosystem Services, that has been going on for some time. And at the global level, what we do periodically, every 5 or 6 years or so, is to actually measure the wealth of countries in the different forms: natural capital, physical capital, human capital. And the idea is that if the capital, which is the foundation of production and well-being, is not managed appropriately, this basically brings country in a non-sustainable path. So it's important to kind of track the way in which these assets are being managed over time.
Okay, so what I'm going to try and do is to look at what we heard in terms of the assessment of individual firms, what we heard about the macro situational environment, and then talk about how can we really look at sustainability as a driver of job creation and not see them as somehow competitive going forward. So how do I do this? Okay, so basically the first challenge we have, and you can walk around the room here and see a lot of different people working on it, is the challenge of jobs in Africa. We know that we need to generate about 450 million jobs by 2035, so in 15 years. And if we keep doing business as we do it today, we will only generate 100 million. So there's a huge growth that is needed for Africa. At the same time, we know that there is large underemployment. There's very inefficient agriculture. Again, we see here in the symposium how many people are trying to work on this. When we look at the recommendations of what needs to be done, they're very traditional, right? We need to switch into higher productivity agriculture. We need to strengthen institutions. We need to look at adoption of technology and develop the right skills. But we also have to realize that this is a pathway. This is not something you switch on one day and it happens. So you need to increase productivity. You need to have basically move from rural to urban settings, which is already happening in Africa at a very rapid pace. You need to change the sectors. So instead of having subsistence agriculture, think about high value agriculture. Think about tourism, but also think about manufacturing. The challenge of manufacturing is that it's dirty, right? It destroys some of the capital that we just heard about. And then the final transition that has to happen is from subsistence, family businesses to wage income, right? Very, very few people in African countries are still in a wage job. Most of them work for their own account, or they work in family enterprises. The other one is obviously we need to protect the environment. I took a quote from the latest assessment on biodiversity that says that 1 million species are currently threatened with extinction, and we're undermining the entire natural infrastructure on which our modern world depends. This was the report that came out in Paris a few weeks ago. What is interesting is that if you look at what the World Economic Forum says, this is a graphic from their latest global risk report. What you can see is that a number of this is a survey of businesses, governments, NGOs, basically World Economic Forum. And this is the impact that people are expecting. So up here is bad and the likelihood. All the green things are environment. So basically business leaders, public sector leaders, NGO leaders are saying that the most dangerous things for growth, for progress, are all in the environmental field, or at least, 5 out of 10 of the most highest impact and highest likelihood. So I try to take you from the big picture back to what we're talking about today, which is, and I want to leave you with that thought, don't think about sustainability as something bad that's going to slow down growth. To me, sustainability is the way forward. That's the way you're going to generate sustainable, good jobs in Africa. Thank you.
The role of government. Well, normally one look at the Agenda 2030 and realize that there is already a set of 70 goals, indicators. And in certain cases, there are also custodians of the indicators, as is the case for the World Bank. Is this enough for getting sustainability in the world? No. Which is the reason? Mainly, we have 4 groups of actors for sustainability. The government, of course, the public, the private sector, which is doing, of course, an important part of the job, the civil society in all its structure and formations, and a 4th and very important element, the metric, the capacity to measure. I'm not referring so much at this stage on the national statistical system, but on the capacity to measure what is going on at every level, not only at the macro level, but at the micro level. The policies are in many cases shaped according to the capacity to measure consequence, to plan accordingly, to to measuring capacity. If they are lacking, if there is shortage of measuring capacity, sometimes politicians are hesitant, reluctant to adopt decisions. They need that part, the micro level. The micro level affects not just the decision of the public government, affects the local level, affects the strategic decision by companies, affects the consumer decisions. So this is an important element for obtaining a really implementation of Agenda 2030. On this sense, Advantage initiative is an initiative which offers the possibility for a selected group of consumers, for companies and others to take the decision in certain area. Well, this is a point which is sometimes a little bit neglected, underestimated, but affects the real possibility to get an advantage, to go through and make progress. I'm particularly at the moment involved at the EU level with the implementation of the Agenda 2030 in the European Union. Of course, the discussions are very general. We tend to make a reference to the strategic agenda by the European Union, by the Commission, which will be adopted by the end of next month in Brussels. But we understand that the Commission will be more or less ready to introduce Agenda 2030 in its strategic capacity if they will be confronted with a capacity to measure. I'm not trying now to send to the other field the ball, but the global and overall global agenda is important, but at the same time is also a job which is conducted at the grassroots of our society. A series of international organizations like the UNESI in Geneva are, for instance, confronted with the problem of statistical standards, with technical standards. But the financial area is where possibly a measurement system could be even more effective if we are able to reach it. And if we, at the same time, gain the awareness by the general population that this is a way to adopt decisions of consumption, of investment, of industrial plants, and so on.
We're going to have to bring money to a place. How would we want to bring money into a place? The money that is brought in cannot be brought in just for the sake of normal, basic, old-fashioned profit, but the money has to be rerouted in a way the investments are done, and the requests for the investments are somehow placed as a pledge for money to come in. So we can have the place work better and become more environmental or sustainable friendly to the people beside to the investors. When we talk about society, we have to talk about people. When we talk about people, we talk usually about smaller enterprises. When we talk about smaller enterprises, is where some of the basic or the most a very good part of investments are not only going to the top liner, are going to the middle and bottom of the investment chain. And that's where I'm saying that when you fund it by European bank or by any agency or by any other means, you should be required to have some sustainable way before they give you money to go into risk venture, which they do not take care of people and the environment in Africa. Because it's very easy to talk, about doing a sustainable balance sheet. Everybody's doing it. It's almost becoming, it is mandatory. But those are more done for window dressing most of the time than for actual purposes. So we're all doing this for window dressing, and we're leaving the actual story on the ground untouched and unsolved, and that's where things and people should be tackled to act. This is some of my thoughts because risk money moves to risk places because there is where you don't have a democracy of investment. So in that way, speculation and profit can be higher, but rules can be somehow not present, and you are not bound to do anything that might make that place a better place to live or to invest on the long term.